All right, listen up closely, gentlemen, because what I'm about to reveal in today's video is usually something I don't just share with anyone. This is the kind of thing I reserve for my high-level clients. Guys who are serious about shattering the friend zone with the girl they like and getting her into the bedroom. So today in this video, I'm giving you my exact routine, step by step, that you can use on that cute female friend that you've been low-key crushing on. To entirely flip the situation on her, make her body scream out in excitement, and get her 10 out of 10 horny for you pretty much instantly within just a few minutes, using what I call the hot spots routine on her. This is a unique, simple series of moves that I'm going to show you exactly how to execute on, that takes a situation where that girl sees you as just the nice guy to becoming that man that she pictures late at night when she's all alone by herself in her bed, biting her lower lip and squirming under the covers. And at the end of this video, I'm going to show you two very different delivery methods, each which will get you slightly different results, one leaning more towards sexual tension, the other leaning more towards sexual value. And if you're a little bit confused by that, don't be, because believe me, you will understand everything by the end of this video. Now, something to keep in mind here, gentlemen. This will literally work on any girl you like. It's literally the first step to ripping your female friend's clothes right off her body. The only thing you need to make this work properly is that you do need to have access to see her and talk to her face to face in person. Meaning this is not going to work over messaging, and you will need some privacy. Talking just a moment or two alone with her, away from prying eyes, away from friends and family. And those are really the only two things you need. And listen, this is perfect if you're an older guy. In fact, this is especially potent if you're an older guy and she's a younger woman. Because what this routine does is it cuts through all the tension, it cuts through all the awkwardness, and it builds a bridge for you straight into building sexual chemistry. So instead of that girl wondering, wait, would it be weird if I hooked up with him? He's so much older than me. She will be thinking to herself, why am I feeling like this around him? What the hell is happening to me? So this is your escape hatch out of that friend zone. Because listen, I've taught this to hundreds of my clients and they all tell me the exact same thing. Jesse, you have no idea how amazing this is. This worked for me and it turned everything around for me. Now here's exactly what this move is going to do for you, gentlemen. First of all, it's going to break the touch barrier. It's going to tear that touch barrier down for you. It's going to allow you to touch that girl all over her body, lighting her body up like a Christmas tree, but in a smooth, playful, and clever way without it feeling forced or creepy, where she's not going to pull away, but instead she's actually going to lean into it and love every single moment of it. Second, what this routine does is it's going to ignite some serious sexual heat here, meaning it's going to leave her thinking about you while she's lying there in bed all by herself, trying to go to sleep, wondering if you meant something more, replaying the sensations over and over again in her mind, over and over again in her imagination. And this is what most men truly don't understand about women. Desire starts right here in the mind. It's when she's thinking about you, that's precisely when she begins to fall in love and think to herself, wait, I actually like this guy. I actually like this guy a lot. And third, gentlemen, what this routine will do is it will reframe how she sees you completely. So instead of being the nice guy that she only texts when she's bored, she's gonna start seeing you as the guy that excites her, as the man who knows how to touch her all over her body and knows exactly where she likes to be touched without being needy or weird about it. Now, it does need to be said, gentlemen, use this with discretion. Do not use this on girls you're not actually interested in. Do not use this on girls just to stroke your own ego or to play games with a girl's heart. Do not misuse this, because if you start toying around with girls just to get a cheap thrill out of them, you are not being clever. I'd argue you're being a coward, because you're just contributing to all the skepticism and all the emotional armor that these women carry around today. So only use this on women you actually want to get into bed with. Now, the very first step, gentlemen, is you want to get that female friend on board with what you're about to do. You want to get her on board with what you're about to show her. In other words, you want to get verbal compliance from her. And guys, this is really important. You cannot skip this step, because once that female friend of yours gives you that verbal affirmation of yes, let's go ahead, let's do this, once she's voiced verbal agreement to go along with it, she has now committed herself to participating. And that is a psychological commitment on her part. And from that psychological commitment, that's where all the compliance will flow. So here's exactly how you're gonna do this. Here's how you're gonna get verbal compliance from the girl to proceed. So you're gonna simply look at her and you're gonna tell her with a smile, hey, you know what, Amber? You want to know something that I find interesting? And then you just shut up. Her brain is going to light up. It's going to be itching to know what you're going to say next. What's the interesting thing you know? So just play off her sense of curiosity, be quiet. Once she asks you what it is, then you're going to tell her, well, Amber, did you know that you have special hot spots all over your body? Yeah, look, any place where your body bends or twists or folds, like the back of your elbow here or the back of your knee, there are millions of these sensitive little nerve endings called exteroceptors that when they're touched, release endorphins. And different people have different ones that feel better to them. So everyone is wired a little bit differently. And I'm kind of curious, Amber, to see which is your favorite hotspot. Are you curious to find out? And this is the key moment here, gentlemen, because again, you're gonna pause, you're gonna shut up, you're gonna stop talking. And this is very important, gentlemen, because you are waiting to get that verbal agreement from her. You're waiting for her to say, yes, let's do this. Now, in my experience, 99% of the time, that female friend of yours will agree. But if she's on the fence about it, if she seems a little bit hesitant, and that's a big if, usually she'll go along. What you wanna do though, if she is hesitant, is just play it cool and tell her, hey, look, I read it in a magazine. It's gonna take just 5 seconds. I think you're really gonna like this. And 9 out of 10 times, that little bit of a push will be enough to put her over the fence, where she'll smile, maybe she'll roll her eyes a little bit and say, all right, fine, show me. And now you've got that female friend of yours exactly where you want her, where she's not just passively going along with something, but now, because you got that verbal compliance, she is an active participant. She is now actively engaging and actively choosing to go along with this. And this is what sets up that compliance for the rest of the routine to happen. Now, before we get into the rest of the steps here, something really important to keep in mind, gentlemen. When it comes to touching a woman with physical contact with your fingers, less is more. I'm gonna say that again, gentlemen. When it comes to touching a woman, less is more. Because if you get too heavy-handed with her, if you get too grabby with her, you will actually start to break the sexual tension. Because sexual tension, what that is the difference between the girl wanting to be touched and actually being touched. So when you make it that your touch is barely there, you are giving her feather light touches. When your touches are just light enough to tease her, but not heavy enough to satisfy her, that's when you create maximum sexual tension. So in all these moves, what you're doing is giving her feather light touches. You are giving her very, very light touches, where the pleasure is give her a light touch and then you take it away. So it's a little bit like giving her a taste of the drug, just a little taste of the drug, and then taking it away before she can get her fix. Leaving her wanting more. Guys, leaving her wanting more. Leaving her wanting to chase after that feeling, leaving her hooked and leaving her craving it. So first up, what you're gonna do is the wrist touch. You're gonna reach out your hand like this and tell her, hey, show me your hand. And then you're gonna lightly turn her palm facing upward and tell her, you know, you have a lot of exteroceptors right here on the inside of your wrist, nerve endings that respond really well to touch. And now you're just gonna touch her wrist very gently, very lightly with your fingertips or with the back of your fingers. It should only feel like a whisper going across her skin, just enough to activate those nerve endings. And then you're gonna ask her, so how does that feel? And you can ask her, so from 1 to 10, 10 being the most pleasurable, how does that feel from 1 to 10? Now, you gotta remember, gentlemen, that when it comes to touch, I said before, less is more. When it comes to physical touch, less is more. You're just giving her a little taste of what it feels like when you touch her. You're giving her a little taste, a little bit of sensation, and then you're taking it away. So it's that combination of pleasure with the denial of it, where she wants it back. That's what creates the sexual tension. Now, by the way, gentlemen, if you're tired of feeling stuck or frustrated or left behind in your dating life, if you're tired of feeling invisible, if you're tired of having these nice guy conversations that go nowhere, if you're tired of seeing all these beautiful women walk on by and doing absolutely nothing about it, I get it. It's very frustrating. But look, it can all change and it doesn't have to take years. You don't need to be the best looking guy in town. And you don't need to be 25 years old either. You can get the women you want by turning her on right here. This here is her biggest erogenous zone, her mind, her imagination, her emotions that she feels. That is the erogenous zone, the one that most men never learn how to touch. And I got a 12-week coaching program, gentlemen, and if you follow what I tell you to do exactly, you can go from meeting a beautiful woman to giving her a kiss all within 10 minutes of meeting her. Even if you're shy or rusty or you're older, it does not matter, because I reprogram your brain using visual neural programming to take out all those old limiting beliefs that are holding you back, that are keeping you stuck, keeping you afraid, and I rewire your confidence at its very core. So if this is the one part of your life that feels like it's still out of your control and you want to be dating these younger, beautiful, attractive girls without feeling like you're chasing after them all the time, go right here to youngerpartner.com, fill out the short application you see there. We'll hop on a quick, no pressure phone call. Again, guys, it's no pressure, no BS, just real coaching to get you the real results you want with beautiful girls. And listen, I've helped hundreds of men over the past 2 decades. I've helped guys from all walks of life, from engineers to CEOs to artists. So if you're ready to stop settling for mediocrity, let's get in touch. All right, moving on. What we're gonna do next is build compliance momentum. We started with the most non-threatening casual zone, her inner wrist with the wrist touch, and now we're gonna escalate to the next zone, the inside of her elbow. Do an elbow touch, where we touch her very softly right here and you tell her, you know, the inside of your elbow is another hot spot with lots of extra receptors. So how does that feel when I touch it? How does that feel from 1 to 10? And the girl, she'll usually smile and tell you something like, oh, it feels really nice. And she'll give you a higher number than she did with the wrist. Now notice here how we are baby stepping the touches along, starting with her wrist, which requires less compliance, and moving on to the inside of her elbow, which requires more compliance to touch. So every touch that we do requires more compliance as we go along. So we're essentially baby stepping the process, almost like boiling a frog in a pot of hot water. The frog is just gonna sit there in that pot of hot water as we turn up the heat hotter and hotter. All right, gentlemen, the next step, you are going to do the clavicle touch. What you're gonna do is you're going to trace your finger along her clavicle, touch her right here beneath the neck. And you're gonna tell her, you know, the clavicle is another very sensitive hot spot for a lot of women. You can ask her, so how does that feel when I touch it? So from 1 to 10, does that feel even better? And at that point, you might notice a little change in the woman, right? Her breathing might change. She might start to bite her lower lip because her body is getting turned on. And the whole reason you can even get to this point is because you are building verbal compliance. You are building compliance momentum. You are building a staircase of yeses, because each touch feels good. Each touch feels pleasurable. And each moment she is verbally affirming that she is feeling the pleasure. Each moment, each touch is yet another green light to further escalate. So once she said yes to the wrist, I like that. Once she says yes to the elbow, oh, I like that touch. Once she says yes to the clavicle, now her guard is fully down and she's immersed in the experience and looking forward with anticipation to that next touch you're about to give her. And now with that compliance momentum running hard on all 4 cylinders in your favor, in full swing, what you can do next is the back of the neck touch, where you're simply going to reach around to the back of the girl's neck and just let your fingers gently slide across there, and you're going to tell her, you know, the back of your neck is another hot spot. So from 1 to 10, how pleasurable does that feel? And then she'll tell you something like, oh, that feels fantastic, or that's like a 9 out of 10. And now you have that verbal confirmation from the girl that she's aroused, she's feeling pleasure, and you can go even yet another step. Now from here, you can start touching her in even more intimate spots. You can start touching her in various erogenous zones, like her breast, the inside of her thigh. You can even give her hair a bit of a tug. For example, you can just gently pass your hand along the upper part of her chest, or you could call it her breast area, just letting your hand glide just close enough so that she feels it. And you can ask her, so how does that feel? How does that feel from 1 to 10 when I touch you there? Or another hot spot you can touch her on is her thigh, the upper part, the inside part of her thigh. And you can tell her, you know, this is another hot spot that most people don't realize is super sensitive. So when I touch you down here, how does that feel from 1 to 10? Now, yet another erogenous zone you can hit is you can reach around to the back of her neck and just gather a small tuft of hair in your hand, very small tuft right here at the base of her neck, and just give it a soft, deliberate tug. Not a hard yank, you're not being rough here, just a super gentle tug of the hair, just enough to tell her, you know, this is what it's gonna feel like when I pull your hair in bed. How does that feel? Feels good, right? She might giggle, she may go quiet, look into your eyes, but she's gonna feel that. And she's gonna feel it very deeply. That is gonna hit her very hard, as that little preview you're giving her is gonna unlock 1,000 fantasies inside her mind. Now, of course, gentlemen, we gotta use some common sense here. You're only escalating to the next intimate zone, to the next hotspot, if the girl is clearly into it. You're only escalating if she's clearly enjoying it. So if her body stiffens up for any reason, or she goes quiet and she seems unsure about things, you can always stop it at any point. You can always stop it right there. In other words, always be reading her face. Always be reading her body language as you go along before proceeding to the next place to touch her. So each touch is essentially a compliance test. Each touch, you're essentially looking for that verbal permission to go on to the next intimate spot to touch her in. Now at this point, you've touched her in all the right ways, gentlemen. You've gone from her wrist to her elbow, to her clavicle, to touching the back of her neck, maybe even giving her a light tug on her hair, touching the inside of her thighs, touching her erogenous zones. And along the way, you've infused it all with some nice, thick sexual tension. Well, now it's time to declare the winner. Because remember, this whole experience is set up under the frame, different people have different favorite hotspots. So girl, let's find out which is your favorite hotspot. So the frame is the two of you are discovering something unique and fun about her. So now you can tell her, you know, Amanda, I'm really curious. Now that we've gone through all your different hotspots, which one is your favorite? And then you can watch her smile. You might watch her hesitate for a moment as she's thinking about it, and she might tell you, well, it's the back of my neck's my favorite, or right here was my favorite, or the hair pull. But whatever she says, you want to tell her then, okay, so there we go. Now we know your favorite hotspot is your neck. That's so interesting. And at this point, what I would recommend you do is reward her compliance. Guys, reward her compliance. Simply look her in the eye and tell her, you know, Amanda, you did really well. You get a point for that. Or you could tell her, look, Amanda, I love how open-minded you are about trying new things. You're not like other women. So praise her for being receptive, praise her for her compliance, praise her for being exploratory. After all, you want to keep touching her from this point on, so reinforce that positive behavior in her with a little verbal reward. And gentlemen, look, I'm telling you, if you follow this process from start to finish exactly like I'm giving it, if you follow the process and execute properly, this gets women super horny. This gets women super aroused. I'm talking about like wet, locked in, pupils dilated. Why are we still wearing clothes level of horny? And that touch barrier, what you have done is you have just shattered that touch barrier. You've now touched her all over her body, intimately, playfully, confidently, without coming across as being weird or creepy. And look, this is the other great thing. Now that you've touched her in all these different places on her body, you essentially have free reign to touch those areas again and again and again. Just keep repeating. Keep repeating. If it worked once, touch her there again. Like you can just casually run your fingers down the back of her neck in the middle of a conversation. And it won't feel random or too much because she's already verbally told you how much that touch turns her on. The other great thing about this is now that she's told you straight from her own mouth what her favorite hot spot is, where she likes to be touched, whether it's her neck or the hair pull or the inside of her thigh, well, guess what? Now you have like this cheat code in your hands to turn her on anytime you want. And you don't need to guess because she's already told you what she likes. She's already handed you a roadmap. So anytime you want to turn up the heat on that female friend of yours, get that female friend of yours horny again, just touch her in the same hot spot again and again and again. Keep repeating what works. Just keep hitting her in that favorite hot spot to turn her on again instantly. And we call that twisting the knife. So the first time you touch her here in this routine, that's kind of like the discovery phase. And the future times you touch her, where you repeat, that is reinforcement. And that's how you turn that casual interaction with a female friend, where it's platonic and boring, into a deep craving. That's how you get the girl thinking from, well, he's kind of a nice guy, I guess, to I cannot stop thinking about this guy. Now, since you're interested in getting a female friend of yours turned on through physical touch, watch this one next. This is the simple hug that makes a good girl melt for you instantly. So you gotta greet the girl anyway when you say hello, whether it's a work colleague or a classmate, a female friend of yours, or you're on a first date. So why just give her the boring handshake and be like, hi, right? That's not gonna do anything. Do this hug instead. It will instantly get her turned on every single time. So go watch that video right now.